Hi, my name is Joanna Dong. Welcome back to the Joanna Asks channel. In this channel, we basically explore different diverse career opportunities in depth. And our goal is to help high schoolers transition from high school life to real life, whether that's college or beyond. And today we have a special guest speaker today. Would you please like to introduce yourself?
Okay, I'm Peng Chia, and I have already retired, but then previously I was working global supply chain.
So the global supply chain, can you give a brief look of what your daily tasks are?
So basically, what we do is that we work with suppliers. Number one is to make sure that they be able to deliver to our requirement. Number two is that they have enough capacity whenever we need those capacities, and contractually they basically have to abide by the contract terms, which stipulated what I've just mentioned just now. So end of the day, yeah, is to make sure that we have sufficient inventory or sufficient supplies to meet the factory requirements.
What was your inspiration to enter this field?
Well, to begin with, when I was small, I'm basically a very hands-on person. But then due to certain circumstances, where I don't have the opportunity to pursue something that I like, which is hands-on like engineering, I was basically pursuing something that is more, I want to say, boring, which is finance. And after working for almost my whole life in finance, and since organization, and they have all the opportunities and all the type of jobs that you can ask for, I started looking into things that I wanted to do before I even retired. And that one particular position that I have, or that one particular area that I was looking for, was to how am I going to be able to use my knowledge and use my finance skills to engage with suppliers to understand the demand, understand our internal demand, and then how are we going to be able to work with the supplier to ensure that they have the right capacity.
Oh, okay, so I see. So you said that a lot of things you can choose
Of
from.
course, yeah.
Yeah, and like different fields.
Yes. So being research and development, a technology development company, and of course a manufacturing company, you basically can see a wide range of job opportunities, ranging from anything from an admin security down all the way to engineering to manufacturing to all the technical aspects that you can ask for, especially when you're talking about computer technology.
That's different options for people to choose from. So, for your, I guess, like your global supply chain, what is like the education degree? If there's like a degree requirement, yeah.
So my background is finance, and the way I look at it, global supply chain is a matter of understanding demand and supply, right? So even people that has, and that's the good thing about it. You understand the business and you understand the process. So even an engineering would be able to what they call engage with a supply chain. From my skill set, I basically use the finance skill sets where we do a lot of analysis in terms of demand supply, and be able to present to the supplier a scenario or a demand picture that will be able to convince them to actually cater for the supply that or the capacity that we need, right? Now, I've also seen people that are pursuing a very specific supply chain management degree, right? Obviously, yeah, that is truly catered to supply chain. Will they be able to go into finance? Probably not, right? I've also seen people that has been in economics that also goes into supply chain, and economics basically you're also dealing with supply and demand, right? So from that standpoint, I would say supply chain can cater to a lot of degree diversity, and be able to allow people who has not necessarily the true technical supply chain requirement, but to be able to also participate in the supply chain activities.
Yeah, so you don't think it's like too late at one point if one person's like, I want to go into supply chain? Like for you did that after like your previous.
Yeah, because I mean, to me, I feel that hey, I'm almost retiring, and I wanted to pursue something that I can interact. I can actually be able to go and look at how the supplier's parts relate to what I'm doing, right? and be able to talk to them and be able to educate them on the urgency that work with them on the timeline, and then be able to also in a way convince them and says that this is what we need and you guys got to be prepared.
Mm-hmm. So for this career profession, what would you recommend high schoolers taking as like courses when they're in high school to better prepare them, or in college too, to better prepare them for your profession?
Well, for strictly speaking on supply chain, I would say, I mean, obviously there is a dedicated degree called supply chain management,
Mm-hmm.
right? But you know, depending on, I mean, there will be probably people who think that will be the first step to take to get into this supply chain environment. But like I mentioned, you know, I came from a finance background, but then there are certain skill sets in finance that are also relevant in supply chain that we can actually tap into. Bottom line is that because I've been in for a long time, I understand what, and by understanding the business and be able to apply the finance skill set, you basically be able to work in the environment that demand what they call the interaction between your internal requirement and the external requirement.
Oh, I see. So for global supply chain management, what are some skills required? Like, do you need to know how to communicate?
Analytical, I think that's number one. Because by able to do have a good analytical mind, you'll be able to actually work with the supply chain to actually fully understand or even make them understand what your requirement is, right? And how and prepare them to actually be able to make their capacity available whenever we require it. Number two, obviously, is communication. Communication will include negotiation, right? Negotiation is definitely key as well. Pricing is very important, so negotiation comes into play, right? And communication, especially with the senior management, because when you are in such a big company and when you work with the supplier, typically the suppliers are very small companies, and you will be basically working with somebody that's very senior in the supply chain company, right? So, for example, I basically works with the CEO of a supplier that supplies parts to India. So communication comes in very handy in the sense that you'll be able to, I mean, number one, respect them. Number two, be able to convince them with this data, and then number three, you know, to be able to negotiate with them the right terms that you wanted or the company wanted in order to benefit out from this relationship.
Okay, so it sounds like it needs a lot of negotiating skills, knowing really how to like interact with people. Like that's what you said, mainly about your job. Does it require, I guess, like teamwork, like within like your team?
Definitely. Teamwork is within the team itself. Yeah, it's definitely very important as well. Because, for example, when you deal with a supplier versus your colleague dealing with another supplier, you can actually learn from each other in terms of how do they interact, what skill sets do they use to actually be able to work with the supplier and become successful at the end of the day, right? I would say that is very important because not every supplier is the same, right? Some supply can be a lot more difficult to deal with. Some supply are a lot easier to deal with. So yeah, you basically have to be tactful and be able to leverage on the learnings that you have, whether it's from your colleague, whether from your experience, from a different supplier, or whether from your previous job or somewhere else. Even from college, when you deal with people, right? If you can leverage some of those experiences, then end of the day, I think you want to be what they call successful partnership with the supplier.
So it sounds like this profession really looks at and interacts with a lot of different people, like different kinds of people.
Yep.
So if anyone is interested in like interacting with people from all around, from like different backgrounds and different personalities, it would be an interesting job to do for sure.
Yeah, it will definitely be interesting, and but I want to make sure that it's clear that this particular job does need certain skill set, right? And communication is definitely one of them. Analytical is another one of them. Negotiation is another one of them. But I don't want it to make it feel like, hey, for someone who can just keep talking and they will fit into this type of job. It might not, because the other skill set will come into play as well when you talk about analytical as well as negotiation.
Yeah, so it's like it needs two of these to perform this job well.
Two
or to be
plus
successful.
communication, I would say three.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I see. Okay, so talking about communication, other than, I know we had said about, like, negotiation, is that more like on the phone, like verbal communication, or is that more like written form?
A lot of it are verbal, other than contract where everything is written. A lot of it are actually verbal. Yeah, because things happen very fast. In our industry, we can just our requirement can swing within 20% within 1 week. So so a lot of times we basically have a quick communication, and just to make sure that hey, the supplier is able to support our requirement, and then yeah, we just let the process take over, which is raising all the documents and get the things done.
So it's just the contact part that's written.
Yeah. Contact is very important. Yeah.
So during the COVID pandemic, we see a lot of things happening around the world with the supply chain. So what happened then for you? Like, for you, was there any challenges or?
Yeah, there are definitely challenges. Let me see. During COVID, a lot of supplier, and including my supplier, they got to change the way that they work, or the way that their people work, right? I mean, I'm sure you heard about, some people go to work, some people don't go to work. Some people get sick, so they get quarantined for X number of days. And if somebody gets sick in the workplace, then probably the whole group gets quarantined, right?
Yeah.
So yes, we definitely encounter that, and we totally understand what it is. But before that even happened, we actually work with a supplier to come out with a plan on how they're going to be able to contain issues like this, right? And for this particular supplier, what he did is that he actually shared with us things that he do, and which we are aligned to. For example, they have working space that are being separated, right? People that comes in, they have temperature control. So all these things are being worked out ahead of time, just to minimize the impact if there's going to be any, right? Now, obviously, there's no 100% proof, and there are occasions that we get issues where the people were not or were infected, and we ended up with certain delay in terms of some of those shipments, right? We have to make sure that we communicate those upfront with our internal manufacturing department that requires those parts, right? At the same time, we also want the supplier to come back to us and tell us that what is their recovery plan, right? How are they going to recover what they missed, right? So a lot of those are being worked verbally, phone conversation, and making sure that what the supplier can, how much can the supplier ship us, how much our requirement, and then how we're going to be able to mitigate any of those issues if, let's say, there is a delinquent in the shipment.
So during COVID, was your job something that required you to go to work, or did you stay at home the most time? Or was
I stayed at home all the time.
Okay, yeah, because it's just like you just make
It's all
phone
work from
calls at
home.
home.
Yeah. Very particular about COVID in the sense that they do not want people to be affected, or because this is going to be highly transmissible, and it will affect a lot of people. So from that standpoint, basically, even encourage everybody to work from home by providing all the necessary office equipment as well as office furniture to make sure that everybody is able to work from home just like as they were working in the office.
Oh, so they even provided additional things for you to stay at home. Oh, that's an interesting benefit. I didn't know it. So, in terms of salary, what is like the starting salary, or like how well is the pay for this job?
I wouldn't be able to tell you much about salary because this, I would say, let's call it a confidential item, right? But then a competitive, I want to say a competitive remuneration, right? Now, when I say remuneration, what I meant is that it's not just salary, because being a public company, they have stock options, right? So remuneration, or we call total compensation, is basically includes the salary, the bonuses, as well as stocks, right? So from that standpoint, on a periodic basis actually do benchmark with other Fortune 500 companies or other what they call multinational companies in terms of total compensation to make sure that all the employees are paid, you know, I would say reasonably, or at least at the right level. So, but the thing is that they want to make sure that they remain competitive, and to remain competitive, you got to make sure that you'll be able to you'll be able to pay or remunerate your people according to what the market is telling them.
Yeah. So for this profession, other than what we talked about COVID, with like delays and stuff, just in general for your profession, what are some challenges you encountered, and how did you overcome them? That could be like communication with people, with your boss, or like anything that happened before.
Okay, the most recent, and even I believe, I don't know if it's still happening today. So the war in Ukraine, right? So our supplier has a sub-supplier in Ukraine, and when the war erupted, the sub-supplier were not able to ship anything to the supplier, and with that, obviously, then my supplier will not be able to ship anything, right? The supplier took some action by working with the sub-supplier to understand what does it take, what are the components that are required, that are in shortage or that are at risk due to the war. All in all, we obviously, with this type of issue, when it's going to affect our internal manufacturing, it gets elevated all the way to the highest level, right, in our supply chain group. And with those people at the top, which has a lot of experiences, so we actually came out with a solution by getting the parts out through by hiring people that are what do you call that, that are professional people that are able to bring those parts out for the supplier. So yes, those things get escalated very high up in the management chain in order to get approval, and then after the approval, then we basically have to just execute it and make sure that the parts goes back to the supplier.
So it seems like this job really requires you to like focus and be updated on current events, global
yes,
events happening in the world.
Of course.
So people that like the news, I feel like they'll know what is happening, and it does apply to the supply chain very much. Yeah. So for this profession, what is some advice you have for people that are considering this field?
Number one, you got to be staying up to date with what the economy is doing, what the whole global situation is doing. How are all these activities going to impact what you are doing, right? In this case, for example, if I talk about my supplier, I also want to know how would a global shortage in terms of metals would affect them, right? For example, there was at one point there was a shortage of copper, right? And copper is a big item in my supplier. So we need to understand, hey, how are they managing their inventory of those raw materials to ensure that it doesn't affect their production, right? So yes, you got to be staying on top of things, on top of what the global situation is going around, and obviously be able to relate back to how is it going to affect your supplier, and then what is the supplier, what are the actions that your supplier are taking in order to mitigate those issues. So yeah, it's a lot. It's kind of making everybody aware of what is the economy doing, how is the economy doing, how is the what do you call that, the commodities I should say, the commodities are doing, how is the world situation, if there's a war somewhere, how does that affect your supplier, even if there's a flash flood somewhere, how is it going to affect your supplier, right? So yeah, within we actually have a database that would be able to trigger, for example, let's say there is a flash flood in or a typhoon in, let's say, Manila, right? Now, all of us are required to update our sub-suppliers' locations in a database, and if that particular disaster actually hit any of those areas that we have a supplier, then there'll be emails that will be sent out to notify. We call ourselves commodity managers, right? Because we manage commodity. So to notify us so that we know, and we'll be able to work with the supplier to make sure that, hey, does this really affect you in terms of the shipment coming from those areas that are probably having an earthquake right now, or a typhoon right now, or a flash flood right now.
So for this profession, you interact with people on a day-to-day basis, and it's different people from different cultural backgrounds. How do you, I guess, communicate with diverse people, and especially from different cultures, how do you understand each other?
I think so. I will talk to that, but then in my job previously, maybe fortunately I don't have to interact with. Maybe I should. Yeah. Okay. I should say that. Yeah, I interact with people that has slightly different culture. So my supplier, I think they are Iranians. Of course, they have been in US for a long, long time. I do not see much differences in the culture itself. But end of the day, I think what I practice is basically number one is to be able to relate with them, and relate here basically means to fully understand them, to fully understand their situation, and to be able to provide them information as early as possible in order for them to make decisions, particularly if it's going to require for items that are going to require a very long lead time, right? So for example, if we know that internally Intel has demand, let's say we need 30% more capacity in the next 6 months, right? And we know that in order for the supplier to be able to provide that, they basically have to procure certain tools, or even to be able to expand their floor space, which has a long lead time, right? So to be able to understand that, then you'll be able to relate back to the supplier and be able to communicate with the supplier and say, hey, I'm expecting this, and I don't think that, what would be your plans like? Do you have sufficient capacity? Do you need to expand? Do you need to bring in more tools and stuff like that? And they will then internally be able to work out how they're going to be able to support our requirement. So yes, I think number one is to be able to gain their trust. Number two is to be able to communicate as early as possible on your requirement, and then number three is to be able to ensure that end of the day they lay out plans that will be able to meet the requirements that we are asking.
So for people that are interested in the global supply chain, you can find this job in a lot of big companies, right? It's not just so you can choose between which company you like that works under basically the same procedure, same jobs, same tasks, just different companies, right?
Yeah. I think for those big multinationals, especially those that are doing manufacturing, yes, supply chain is definitely one key part of it, because they need people to procure parts, to bring it in, and to be able to either assemble or even manufacture, right? Or even to test. So from that perspective, yeah, mostly manufacturing companies. If you talk about maybe software companies, I think they do have a supply chain as well, but their supply chain probably is a lot narrower, because the amount of things that they buy are going to be very small compared to a big manufacturing company.
Yeah. So for a final question, what is some general advice you have for just all high school students, not just particularly in the profession, but just for students like me who are kind of in between and deciding what to do next?
I think the key is to know what you want. Just like for me, but like I say, unfortunately, I don't get to pursue what I want when I started my career. So I think the most important thing is to know what you want. What type of career do you want? Go out and understand from people what type of job they are doing. right? For example, engineering is a very wide scope, right? Very big scope in terms of engineering. There are a lot of what do you call that? IT related, software related. So what do you actually like, right? That's the key, and be able to talk to, and be able to inquire in terms of how much time do they spend? Because a lot of people likes the job, but end of the day, do they really like the hours that people work, right? For example, engineering, if there's some hard issues or if there's some urgent issues, I've seen engineers that has worked 24, 48 hours without going home. Yes, right? Because they got to resolve the issue,
Oh yeah.
right? Or they might go back, but then they'll be coming back early in the morning, you know, before everybody starts working. So there are a lot of those things that happen. So yeah, I would suggest people start understanding what they want, what do they truly want, and then for example, if they pick something, then go another step deeper to really understand what does that job entails. You know, what flexibility do I have? How long do how many hours do they typically work in order to be able to achieve what they want?
Yeah, yeah. So basically, know your passion,
Yeah.
find your passion, what you're really interested in. Even if it's just like interacting with people, there are jobs out there like this global supply chain management that can fulfill your dreams of interacting with people.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Thank you.
No problem, no problem. Thank you.